Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I'm Daniel Torres, and when I'm not hosting this podcast, I'm the Director of Executive Search at Dwyer Partners. Here at this podcast, if it's the first time you tune in, which hopefully it isn't, but if it is, you're welcome to listen to us every week, Wednesday and Saturday, speaking with top leaders, luminaries, and talent in the consumer goods and retail industries. We're now over 150 episodes in, so go onto our website or on your favorite podcast platform where you're listening to us to entertain and educate yourself with some of the industry's top voices. Do remember that we're part of a family of podcasts which was originally started by the CPG guys in the US. I do recommend you tune into their show to learn all about the basically omni consumer goods industry in the US. They've been running since 2020. I've lost count of the episodes they've done, but I think that it's like in the probably 300, something like that. But don't call me on that because it's probably wrong. So also, if you haven't yet, remember to follow us on LinkedIn, joining a community of 14,000 plus members and counting. You'll find like all the new episodes there, also industry news, people that have changed companies. And you can also find us on Instagram, where you'll find similar content, but with a bit of a different, maybe more social twist. And yeah, if you have any suggestions about the podcast, we are very open to ideas, to your feedback, to publishing industry news that you may send us. So you can email us, you can inbox us on LinkedIn or contact us directly. By the way, we're going to be at Shop Talk Barcelona very soon, between the 3rd and 5th of June. So if you're coming, please do reach out, and we'll be very happy to greet you and even take pictures if you like. And also, we'll be hosting an exclusive happy hour with tapas the day before on June 2nd in a special location in my own city, Barcelona, where the event is happening. So reach out if you're interested in joining. And most likely, and probably confirmed by the time this goes out, another event on Monday with our friends at Price Spider at the Mandarin Oriental, one of the most exclusive places in Barcelona. So as a Barcelonian, I'm not going to miss it, and I wouldn't miss it if I were you either. So today I'm accompanied by two amazing consumer goods leaders, and I would say luminaries as well, because they know a lot of stuff. So on one hand is Christina Nicolau, my co-host all the way from Athens. Hey, Christina, good to see you.
Good to see you, Daniel, and getting people pumped up to have tapas with you on the 2nd of June.
What a better plan. Like Shop Talk should thank me to get people motivated.
Oh, absolutely. I can testify to that.
Exactly. You're welcome, Shop Talk. But Shop Talk has also been very good to us. We'll actually be hosting a live podcast on the show. So I think that's on the Tuesday. I'm not sure, but do keep tabs on our social media, because we'll be announcing that. So on the other side of the table, I have someone that is very dear to me, which I actually placed at his current company years ago. It's Russell Close, Global eCommerce Director at Carlsberg. Hi, Russ. How are you doing?
Hi, Daniel. Hi, Christina. I'm very good, thank you. Yes, how are you both?
Yeah, good. Who would have said, Russ, when I headhunted you years ago that we would be doing a podcast 5 years in?
Yeah, true. Podcasts were around then, I think, but yes, we certainly weren't thinking about it at that time for sure.
No, that's, by the way, Russ, I can disclose it now, but when I went to see you at Carlsberg, I'd recently placed you there, and it's probably one of the earliest beers I've ever drunk in my life. Alcohol-free beer. It was an alcohol-free Brooklyn beer that you said was amazing, and I had to taste, so I did chug it down at I don't know, 10 in the morning or something like that.
That's right, Brooklyn Special Effects. I remember that actually, yeah, because you wanted coffee and I wouldn't let you have it.
Exactly. It's probably one of the only times that I've had a beer in the morning having slept the night before. Normally when I've had beers in the morning, I haven't slept.
And it's a good beer, right? You must have tried it since.
It was good. I think I've tried it since. I can't promise that it was alcohol free. That I can't commit to. So Russ, for the audience to get to know you a bit better, what is your current role at Carlsberg?
Yeah, so as you said, it's the global director for e-commerce. The general responsibilities for that are around setting e-commerce strategy for B2C e-commerce, helping to build competencies in markets, securing capabilities, so investing in platforms and tools that work to help drive the business for us, and then working on sort of test and learns in markets that we can later lift and shift into different markets to accelerate us across the board.
And when you talk about B2C, what do you mean exactly?
So for us, B2C includes omni-channel retailers. It includes pure play retailers, both kind of platform and direct. It would include things like O2O, so online to offline, the likes of Grab, Meituan, Deliveroo, Uber Eats. It includes things like our direct-to-consumer websites, social commerce, community commerce if we're working in kind of China or where we're working in China. Anything which is us selling or communicating directly to consumers.
Great. And before Daniel placed you at Carlsberg, you still had a vast amount of experience in the FMCG industry. So can you tell us a little bit about what you were doing before?
Yeah, e-commerce started out almost as a fluke. I was working for a small greeting card specialist company out of London, doing the Frankfurt Paper World conference, and started talking to Amazon. And we started working with Amazon all through their Vendor Central platform. So I think for the first 2 years, I never spoke to anybody after that. Initial order, I remember, was £100, and then we used to get orders about £10 a week every second week, and built that up to sort of 2, 3, 4% of the business over the couple of years. And from there, e-commerce just became something I enjoyed doing. And I moved up through a second greeting card company where I helped to really build and establish e-com for them, and onwards into Coty.
And which is a beauty, which is a very particular like within the whole bigger, like within all the categories of FMCG, it's a category where e-commerce has been very dynamic. I think that one could argue that it's been a pioneering category. How was your experience there?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I joined there about 10, 11 years ago in UK sales. And at the time, e-commerce wasn't really a thing. It was digital marketing. So it was really big and really kind of getting advanced on that front. But the actual sales part of it was not really fully started. It was retailers selling on our behalf and us not overly engaged. So that was where it became interesting for me, because it was all kind of the fundamentals of e-commerce were needed for the first couple of years, which I quite enjoyed doing. So sort of establishing and building content, working on, getting the right terms with retailers, understanding how to do quick NPD ramp ups for launches, because in the cosmetics industry, particularly with Rimmel, there was a lot of NPD because that's what excites consumers, and it needed to work online, and basically building for future success. So it was, I think it was an exciting time. But definitely when I started, the marketing side, the social media was miles past where they were or where we were on e-com.
Yeah, and when you say NPD, just for our listeners, that would be new product launches, correct?
Oh, that's right. Sorry, catch me for those acronyms.
It's okay. That's why we're here, right? To do all the translation. So as you got into the beauty industry, and as you said, like you got the chance to set the basics there for e-commerce, and then you moved to an industry that traditionally is not as mature digitally as beauty, and that would be like the beer industry or alcohol overall in beverages. So what made you interested in joining this part of the world?
It was very much that. When I looked across the beer category, I kind of thought it was the last category to really enter into e-commerce. So from my perspective, I'd helped build e-commerce with Coty. I'd helped build e-commerce in previous companies, and I really liked it, but I'd been kind of lower down. So I was working my way up the ladder, as it were, and I thought, this is the last chance I've got to build e-commerce, and this time I have even stronger voice in how it is shaped than before. So that to me was a very, very exciting prospect.
Now, what kind of, like, when you think about when you joined Carlsberg in 2018, 2019, coming from
2019, yeah, that's right.
2019, right? And coming from Coty, how different was it in terms of like maturity online?
It was totally different. You know, it was it's almost undescribably different. I mean, here when I joined, there were 2 people in the global e-commerce team, and I think there was 1 in the global digital team. We really hadn't got into even simple things like reporting. There wasn't a mindset that was kind of e-commerce is going to be a real driver for business. It was the business itself is quite traditional in terms of, you know, you launch a product through the on-trade, so through pubs and restaurants, and then you kind of take it to the off-trade, and that's it. It was a very, very traditional thinking place.
And I guess online for brands that have alcohol or other restrictions is even more complex than it is for a beauty brand, right? Because of all the regulations that can differ from country to country. How have you find this part?
The regulations can be quite interesting. In terms of alcohol online, you know, or alcohol advertising in general, we have some markets that are what they call dark markets. So like Norway, for example, where you're not allowed to advertise alcohol. When you're writing about product descriptions, you can't use any words that will give opinion. So you can't say this is a refreshing beer, for example, because refreshing is an opinion. So you just have to be very clinical about things, where you can, and you just describe it. So that was kind of interesting, because I've been used to being able to talk about cosmetics almost freely everywhere, and really kind of linking good content, you know, vibrant content to actual sales. And then one of the first blockers is, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
The second kind of area, you know, it was like, is, I guess your question was around things like, you know, delivery, and how is alcohol kind of regulated. And ultimately, I think there's a few markets that don't do alcohol delivery that we work with, for various reasons. On the whole, though, I think it's quite safe. I mean, you have to order online via digital payments, credit cards, which instantly makes you older than 18 or older than the legal drinking age in most countries, or at least equal to it. Alcohol deliveries are often done by couriers, so like supermarkets taking the delivery, or by, you know, like delivery riders and things. So there is the opportunity to actually check people on the door. It's not so much through the mail. It's not like, you know, where we were shipping lipsticks from retailers, they post it to people. There's very little of that within alcohol.
And like fast forward from 2019 to now, obviously the whole digital commerce scenario in FMCG has changed things quite a lot. Like, where do you think you are now, and what are you looking also in terms of growth now, like for the next year?
So where we are now, I think, is in a far better place. We have much bigger teams across the whole of the organisation. On our B2B side of things, which is our business to business, we have some markets that are majority sales digital. So definitely we're in a far better place. I think we have a leadership team that's excited by e-commerce, and the reach and the kind of power that it has. We've got some particularly in our Asia region now. We've got some very big advocates. We've got some very big successes that are supporting that. And that goes really hand in hand. You know, you start to get leadership advocacy, and then there's more experimentation, more trial, and more wins on the board. So I think we're really, we've really got some big wins across the board in different places, and that's starting to really help us.
And what does this mean for your role, Russell? I mean, like, you're a global director. Obviously, you're not yourself interacting with each and every customer. And you mentioned a variety of sub-channels, right? From omni-channel, pure players, the O2O part, the D2C, social commerce. So where do you put your focus right now?
Yeah, so in the beginning, a lot of what I did here was very similar to things I'd done before. It was setting out the basic fundamentals, getting the kind of the content right, getting the rules right behind the content so that we could take it to the different teams. Today, a lot of what I like to try and do is to actually build competency, across more than just the e-com team. So, you know, where we have a sales team or a marketing team that have retailers or digital activation in their space, they should be able to look after more of it than they had done in the past and actually understand how to engage with it well. Meaning that where we have the specialist e-com teams, they can kind of focus in on being more specialized, I guess, or more doing kind of higher end, less day-to-day projects, but more kind of leading projects and these kind of trials and things to actually push the frontier. So that's one big area that I get involved in, is actually, you know, working with those teams, but also working here in the global team. So how do we integrate e-commerce through our commercial training programs so that when I'm not even there or my team's not even there, e-com is still being taught into the ways of working for Carlsberg.
Which is important, no? Because ultimately, the e-commerce, dominating e-commerce or online is really going to help your offline sales ultimately as well. So to have that,
I really think so. I think the intricacy of how networks are building up across markets within e-commerce now is huge. Social media has become arguably the biggest search engine for products. Retailers would be arguably the second biggest place for searching about products. Then you have retailers forming partnerships, let's say traditional retailers forming partnerships with the very newest, the O2O players. Whether it's all the way in Malaysia and you've got like Grab and eGrocery, whether you've got Co-op and Deliveroo in the UK, the ideas are very similar, and really understanding how to activate in those spaces, how to add value to those spaces is super important.
Yeah.
I guess during COVID, we also saw some big shifts in shopper behavior overall. Obviously, everybody was online because they were locked up in their houses. And we saw some huge trends around D2C websites and apps as well, popping out everywhere for every brand. And we even saw Nike closing down some of their traditional route to market to favor D2C. And then we also had this boom of, let's say, the on-demand delivery, like the Deliveroo of the world and Uber Eats and stuff. How have you seen this evolution? Because you joined right before COVID, right? So you've seen this wave coming in and now fading out. What do you think is sticking to consumer habits?
Wow, that's a question. I could answer that in 100 ways. I think I'll think of a few areas. I think for one, across markets, it forced more elderly people to engage with e-commerce, and I think up until that point, it was much more a kind of under 30s, or let's say sort of professional people, younger people, and families. Whereas I think afterwards, we definitely moved into opening up, say, over sort of 60s. And I think that was a very big kind of positive step. I think And that's continued to play out a little bit. And yes, we saw kind of a decline afterwards in terms of total numbers, but it seems to be back on track of climbing, and probably isn't too far away from where people predicted e-commerce would be back in, say, 2017 or something. But I think the kind of demographics are slightly different, and I think people are very much more comfortable to just enter into e-commerce, come out of e-commerce, go in store, come out from stores, and then start to really be communicated to, whether it's in-home, in-store, it's on the way to a store. And I think that whole omni-channel view is something that is really exciting. I think in terms of players, I used to think about it at the time, and I was wondering if, when the boom was happening, whether the e-commerce years were over COVID were like a bonus, like, or was it going to be a sustained trend? And certainly we saw a lot of the kind of quick commerce O2O players come up and rise, and suddenly were very, very strong. And what I think we're seeing now is the ones that were just grocery, or just kind of had one string to their kind of bow, as it were, are a little more at risk at this point in time. Whereas the ones that were multi kind of channel, or in terms of some of these great super apps that are building up, they're doing taxis, they're doing holiday bookings, they're doing digital payments, they're doing whatever you kind of can think of, and they're doing the food delivery. Those are the ones that seem to be coming out on top and looking like they've got a profitable model that will sustain.
Mm-hmm. And what about like the retailers, as you call them, traditional retailers in the different markets where you're present? Because you're in a global role.
Yeah.
So you're not delivering, like you're not doing that account management. How are you steering the e-commerce channel of, the Carrefours, the Tesco's, or of this world?
Yeah, so within Carlsberg, we've also got a head of, or a director of digital media, and digital marketing. And so between us, we definitely have a kind of a two-prong approach, which is, one, we do have to engage in the marketing and the retail display media, and we do have to make sure that when we're doing e-commerce, we are very much there on the fundamentals. We are very much there on sort of trade terms and understanding how to use the kind of mechanisms that come back through trade terms. We are very much integrating across the different touch points within a digital communication and media perspective, and integrating that together with what is happening with consumers when they're in store and when they're kind of on the way to the store. I mean, if you think of like the UK at the moment, a lot of the supermarkets you go into, it's self-scanning. So you've got like handheld devices that you scan the product. On those devices, as you're scanning, you're getting advertising information that essentially is the e-commerce content you've got online. So the worlds are crashing together more and more, faster and faster, and it's making sure that we are in the right places, doing the right things, which is also a challenge in itself, because, money's not infinite, and it means making choices and actually understanding where our kind of investments are going to work the best.
Yeah, and I guess you also mentioned a little bit about the media part, and we know that e-commerce is where people also, as you mentioned at the beginning, go to search for products, right? So it's not necessarily only going there in order to transact. So how do you see e-commerce as part of like a marketing channel rather than just a transactional place?
For me personally, I think retailers are a destination and are a actual designated part of the marketing mix. I think you kind of see the trends where FMCG companies are really pushing investment into this area, and I think there's a very solid reason. I was reading a report on Tesco earlier, and They have, I think they're kind of they've got 13 million app users, 21 million households are on their program or on their platform, sorry. So if you start looking at the level of reach, you start thinking about how consumers are just there, right? There must be more consumers going through, say, a retailer's digital platform or a retailer's shop online than many of our traditional media places.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as just to extend that a little bit, we've got companies like Food Panda and Grab that pretty much cover half of Southeast Asia's populations. I mean, this is all online, so the level of reach is insane.
Yeah, I mean, and then I guess that the difficult thing is like to come up with all the right assets online that cover that demand. But I won't go into that, Russ, because that's marketing. Marketing. But you know what I found very interesting, Russ, that you answered the question about, you know, steering global key accounts with a marketing answer, which just comes to show. Then you talked about retail media, which just comes to show how much blur there is right now. No,
there's a huge amount of blur. I think I remember and any e-commerce key account manager will probably know that the skill sets you need tend to be, you know, your traditional key accounts. But then you need to have strong opinions on content, strong opinions on editing content, strong opinions on building marketing campaigns online, strong opinions on managing the supply chain, strong opinions on just lots of things, to the point that sometimes you kind of look at a job description that you're writing or that you need, and you're just like, it can't be possible one person knows all that.
I need a general manager.
Yeah, I think I'm a little biased, but I do think e-com people, when they're good, they are very, very, very good.
Yeah. And are there any other like marketing activation channels that you're excited about?
Yeah, I mean, the big ones for me, I mean, I just love what we're doing in Asia, particularly with Food Panda, one of the big fast delivery platforms there. They have a multi-channel. They have their own stores. They deliver for others. They deliver for bars and restaurants. They have their retail media channel. I just think, you know, when we can work with them and when we can connect it all together so that we know we're kind of, you know, so we're supplying into, say, 7-Eleven or whoever it happens to be, and then we're working with them on selling the product out of 7-Eleven. It's a very different approach when you think traditionally you would have sold your product and you almost think job done. Today, you sell your product and then you go and help retailers sell it again or sell it for you. So you're trying to really accelerate the kind of communication to customers, the turn of product. And I think it's a really nice model that you sell your product and then you help others sell it for you so that you speed their turn up as well.
And I guess for all of this to happen, there are multiple tools that are coming up every day and new technologies and something exciting always happening. So how do you personally like keep in touch with all the developments and all the external suppliers out there?
That's a tough one. I mean, we have a couple of very good suppliers. I mean, we are our digital shelf supplier, Data Impact. I think they are phenomenal. And we ask them to talk to us a lot, not just on what they're actually doing for us, but actually, you know, put together kind of learnings that they can come and talk to us. We do the same with other platforms or other suppliers that we use. I think that's one big way to keep up to date on what's happening. I think every now and again it's worth going to a trade show or two. It's very nice once you've been going to them for a few years that actually not everything's going to be new. So when there is something new, you can see it because it stands out versus what you've seen before. And then, you know, I know it's a bit more boring, but solid procurement and RFIs when you're actually looking.
It is boring, I have to say.
Sorry to all the procurement people, but I value your skills highly, but I don't want to do it myself. But it's and sometimes you can see that there's a need, and I think that's probably more important. It's not we don't go looking for technology and then try and work out how to use it. It's if we start seeing needs and then go and try and find a technology that can achieve it, we're far more likely to embed that technology in a way that is successful for us.
Yeah, and Russ, you've talked a bit about your career in this conversation. If you had to go back to the beginning of your career and with everything you've learned, like starting really at quite the beginning of e-commerce, then developing it in beauty, now in the last few years developing it for an exciting category like beer. From everything that you've learned, if you had to go back, what one piece of advice would you give to yourself?
I would just say be yourself. There were plenty of times when I was starting out that I was told you'll never be successful without having a major grocer on your key account management resume, or you don't think in the right way, you don't behave in the right way, whatever it happens to be. The idea of just I'll play the game, Russ. But I kind of always wanted to do it my way, and I quite enjoy being happy at work. So if you spoke to a company or I spoke to somebody or something and it didn't look like it was going to be a person I want to work with or a company I want to work with, I would ignore it and actually just do it my way. I think it may or may not have slowed me down over time. It may have felt frustrating at certain times, but ultimately, I think I've had a very happy working life, and that has led to arguably a successful one.
This was Russell Close, Global E-commerce Director at Carlsberg. Christina, what are your key takeaways from this conversation?
Well, first of all, he has a lot of experience when it comes to e-com. He's been around for pretty much everything, right? Starting at a smaller company, working with Amazon, where all this hype was happening, then moving into beauty, where it was actually booming. It was one of the first industries to grow online. And then I loved how he took up the challenge to say, okay, what's left? What is more for me to build? Let's go to alcohol.
Yeah, because he went to beer, and he also he didn't mention that, but he moved from the UK to Copenhagen for that role, to a category where it was a bit of a mystery if it would actually take off. And I think that he's done really well because I think he really sees with his answer this combination of e-commerce as like a joint marketing and commercial effort, no?
Yes, and I think that it really makes sense for someone to take such a challenging role because only the regulatory environment is quite challenging, right? Let alone all the consumer habits that are built around drinking beverages and alcohol specifically. So it only makes sense for someone who has had the experience of the channel in such a deep level, such as Russ, to take on such a challenge. I have no other words to describe it, but it feels like they're doing a lot really well. And clearly he's very focused behind building competencies in the organization. And that's where the whole conversation is still going on, I believe, in many areas, right? So should we have a sidecar function, which is called a digital function, and they do everything? Or how do I digitize the whole organization? How do I build the capabilities across my sales team so that they are able to handle the omni-channel experience of the shopper?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that also the fact that he said that e-commerce key accounts need to really know a lot about marketing and other departments like supply chain, really, I think he really sees his mission as like they're really driving and being the catalyst within the organization for that transformation, no?
I guess this is what they have to do in roles like that when I think it was you who mentioned that the lines are getting blurred, and that's very, very clear, that it's no clear distinction on where I am just communicating with my shopper or consumer, where I'm transacting with them. Is it me or is it my customer? And what does this mean in terms of the infrastructure that I need behind this? So it's not possible to have multiple people at all times on the same topic. You kind of need to be a jack of all trades when it comes to digital in order for you to be successful and to empower the organization.
Done it before, right?
Yes, I do speak from experience on that part.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, I thought it was interesting how he looked into Asia, which he's also doing. So not that many times you have a global person that's also looking after Asia, because a lot of times Asia or China specifically is another thing. And it's good that you can probably actually would have liked to ask him that, like, what learnings is he bringing from one side of the world to the other? I think could have been fascinating.
Well, just looking at the numbers from my experience, you would usually see China or other parts even of Asia and more developed ones on kind of the future state. So just like looking at a faraway star, and there is a kind of like a time difference between where the rest of the world is and where Asia is when it comes to e-commerce and digital experiences overall, especially the whole omni-channel part, right? That's where we're still struggling a little bit to grasp the new reality of the organizations. Some parts still work the way that they had been originally designed, and you've got like some traditional customers and someone who's building a relationship. Yeah. But for the consumer, everything is shifting into like one unified kind of experience.
Yeah, where as he well said, you need to help retailers sell products for you. No, it's not only about like selling being like a good negotiation with the retailer and forgetting about it. It's really like how your product turns up at the store and the online shelf is super important. So.
I guess he named his kind of responsibilities as B2C at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Which is business to consumer, but essentially it is a B2B2C. Yeah. So you have to do all the sale to the retailer, manage this relationship, and then through them to also manage your relationship with the consumer. And that's exactly what's making it even more complicated, but also more exciting and creating a lot more opportunities for brands to present themselves to the consumers online.
Exactly. Well, thanks, Christina, for your takeaways as always. Thanks everyone for listening in. We'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys and look forward to meeting you in person soon, probably at Shop Talk. Have a great day. Cheers.